"You're not the man of this house anymore, Dad. My husband is, and you need to respect that." Those were my daughter's words, spoken with an icy sharpness I'd never heard from her before. She stood there in my own kitchen, arms crossed, while her husband, Travis, leaned back in my chair like he owned the place. I can still feel the way my chest tightened that day. I'd worked 38 years at the steel plant in Gary, Indiana, waking up at 4 in the morning, busting my back so my daughter, Melissa, could go to college, so she could have a better life than I did. And yet, here I was, treated like some old burden in the very home my hands had paid for. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back. My name is Daniel Cooper. I'm 63 years old, a widower, and for the longest time, I thought raising Melissa alone was my greatest achievement. Her mother passed when Melissa was 10, and from that day forward, every dollar I earned, every vacation I skipped, every sleepless night, it was all for her. I didn't date. I didn't remarry. My life was split between the factory and Melissa's, school plays, her soccer games, and later, her college tuition bills. I paid them off little by little, sometimes taking double shifts. I drove an old Ford pickup until the wheels nearly fell off, just to make sure she had a reliable car to get to campus. When she graduated from Purdue and met Travis, I thought maybe my sacrifices had been worth it. Travis seemed polite at first, well-dressed, always shaking my hand firmly, talking about his big plans in real estate. I remember thinking, finally, someone who'll take care of my daughter the way I did. But it wasn't long before the mask slipped. Travis had charm, yes, but he also had arrogance, the kind that filled a room. He'd make little digs at me like, "Old-timers like you wouldn't understand the market these days." Or, "Don't worry, Dan, Melissa and I will handle the important stuff." Melissa laughed at his jokes, even when they were at my expense, and I'd smile along, swallowing the hurt, telling myself it was harmless. But it wasn't harmless. The shift came slowly. First, Travis started borrowing tools from my shed without asking. Then Melissa told me they'd be staying here for a while to save money for a house. That while stretched into years. Suddenly, my home wasn't my own. It was theirs. My recliner became Travis's spot. My fridge was emptied faster than I could fill it, and Melissa began siding with him on everything, even when he was flat-out disrespectful. One night, after I asked Travis to please stop smoking cigars in the garage because the smell seeped into the house, he smirked and said, "Maybe it's time you moved somewhere smaller, Dan. A retirement community, maybe? We could take good care of this place." I laughed it off at the time, but deep inside, something dark began to stir. It all came to a head on the morning Melissa told me to obey him. I'd been reviewing the property tax bill at the kitchen table when Travis strutted in, poured himself a coffee with the last of the creamer, and said, "Dan, we're thinking of renovating the basement. Turn it into a home theater. We'll need you to chip in." I raised an eyebrow. "Chip in? This is still my house." That's when Melissa stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Dad, you need to listen to Travis. He's the man of the house now." I can't quite describe the silence that followed. It was like the world stopped spinning for a moment. My own daughter, the girl I'd held through fevers and heartbreaks, was telling me I'd been replaced. But here's the thing. She didn't know the truth about this house. She didn't know whose name was really on the deed. And Travis, oh, he was about to learn a very expensive lesson. Travis leaned back in my chair like a king waiting for tribute. Melissa hovered behind him, her arms folded, as if to reinforce his authority. "You're dragging your feet, Dan," Travis said, sipping his coffee. "The sooner we update this place, the sooner its value goes up. You should be grateful we're thinking ahead." Grateful. That word burned hotter than the coffee I hadn't even gotten to pour myself. I kept my voice steady. "Travis, I've been paying this mortgage since you were still in middle school. I don't need you to tell me how houses work." He chuckled, a smug little laugh. "That's the problem with your generation. Always stuck in the past. Real estate isn't about paying bills. It's about leveraging. Melissa understands that." Melissa nodded, almost reflexively. "Dad, he's right. We could make this house worth double in a few years if we invest. But you're being stubborn." "You always are." Her words stung worse than Travis's arrogance. My daughter, the one I sacrificed everything for, was standing there defending a man who hadn't worked a day as hard as I had in his entire life. I swallowed, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Melissa, I'm not stubborn. I'm careful. That's how I managed to put you through school without burying us in debt. You remember those days?" She looked away. "That was then. This is now. Travis knows what he's doing." That was the first time I felt something crack inside me. Not anger, at least not yet. More like heartbreak. But Travis, he wasn't done pushing. "Look," he said, slapping his hand on the table, "this house needs change. And if you can't handle it, maybe you should sign it over to us. Less stress on you. More opportunity for us. Everyone wins." The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. Nearly. Instead, I took a long look at him, memorizing his smug grin, the way he drummed his fingers on the table like he already owned it. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about renovations or investments. He wanted the house. My house. And Melissa. She wasn't stopping him. The following weeks were a slow drip of poison. Travis began inviting his friends over to watch the game, leaving beer cans scattered around my living room. Melissa scolded me for nagging when I asked them to clean up. I started noticing little changes. My recliner moved, my framed photos stacked in a box to make room for Travis's football memorabilia. It was like I was being erased from my own home. One Sunday morning, I came down to find Travis in the kitchen, wearing my late wife's apron, flipping pancakes. "Hope you don't mind," he said casually. "Melissa thought it'd be nice if I cooked. A man's got to take charge in his own house, right?" That word again. His house. I wanted to shout, to tell him off, but Melissa walked in and kissed him on the cheek like this was perfectly normal. I sat down, silent, the smell of syrup and butter heavy in the air, and something inside me shifted. I realized that if I kept quiet, if I kept swallowing my pride, I'd lose everything. Not just my house, but my dignity. And that's when the seed of an idea began to sprout. Because Travis thought he was clever. He thought he could manipulate me, pressure me, maybe even bully me into handing over the deed. But what he didn't know, and what Melissa had forgotten, was that this house wasn't just paid off. It wasn't just mine. It was protected in a way that would make their little plans crumble like dry plaster. And when the time was right, I'd let Travis walk straight into the trap he'd built for himself. But first, I needed to let the game play out. I needed them to push further, so that when I finally struck back, there'd be no mistaking the truth. And oh, they pushed. Because a week later, Travis looked me in the eye and said something that made my blood run cold. "Dan, I've been talking with a realtor buddy of mine. He says the market's hot right now. If we list this place, we could cash out big. Maybe move somewhere nicer, without you holding us back." Melissa stood there, silent, but she didn't disagree. And that was the moment I knew. They weren't just trying to take my house. They were planning to sell it. When Travis said the word sell, my stomach clenched like a fist. The nerve, the absolute gall of this man to stand in the house I bled for and talk about selling it like it was a used car. I forced a slow breath, masking the storm in my chest. "Sell it, huh?" I said quietly. "Interesting idea." Travis grinned, mistaking my calm for surrender. "Exactly. I've got connections. We could flip this place for a killing. I'd handle everything. Paperwork, contractors, the works. You'd barely need to lift a finger." Melissa chimed in, soft but firm. "Dad, it's time to think about the future. You can't live here forever." Her words cut deep, but I didn't let it show. Not this time. Instead, I excused myself, claiming I had errands to run. Truth was, I drove straight to First National Bank of Gary, the same place I'd been going since I was 22. Old Man Williams, the branch manager, still remembered when I signed the very mortgage papers for my house. He greeted me with a smile. "Dan, been a while. What brings you in?" I sat across from him, lowering my voice. "I need to check on the deed. Make sure everything's still squared away." He typed for a few minutes, then nodded. "Yes, sir. House is fully paid. Deed clear. Only your name on it, as it's always been." I felt a wave of relief and resolve. "Good," I said, standing up. "Then I'd like to set up a living trust. Effective immediately." Williams raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Within an hour, I had paperwork drafted that placed the house into a trust under my sole control, with specific instructions that no sale, refinance, or transfer could be made without my direct approval. Even if I died, the house would bypass probate and go straight to the beneficiary I listed, my nephew, Jayce, who lived 2 towns over and actually respected me. I signed the last line with steady hands. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But I didn't stop there. The next morning, I called a lawyer, old friend of mine, Chuck, who'd helped me with some union matters years back. We met at the diner on 5th Street over coffee and eggs. "So, what's the trouble, Dan?" he asked, leaning back in the booth. I told him everything. Travis moving in, disrespecting me, pushing to take over the house. Chuck shook his head. "Classic leech. I've seen it 100 times. But don't worry, you've got options. And with that trust set up, they can't touch a thing." He slid a business card across the table. "If they try to push, call me. We'll make it official." That night, back at the house, I watched Travis puff his cigar on the porch, bragging on the phone to one of his buddies about locking down the property. He didn't know the rug was already pulled out from under him. And here's the truth. Part of me wanted to throw the papers in his face, right then and there, to watch his smug grin crumble. But I held back. Timing was everything. Instead, I played along. I let him boast. I let him strut around like a peacock, dropping hints about realtors and renovations, acting like the king of a castle he didn't own. Melissa followed his lead, drifting further from me each day. She'd whisper about our house when she thought I couldn't hear. One night, I caught her boxing up some of my old photo albums, saying they took up too much space. Each insult, each little betrayal, it only steeled my resolve, because I knew when the truth finally came out, it wouldn't just knock Travis down a peg. It would shatter the entire fantasy he'd built, and the opportunity came sooner than I expected. One Sunday afternoon, Travis gathered everyone, Melissa, myself, and even a couple of his buddies, into the living room. "Big news," he said, clapping his hands together. "I've been talking with my realtor friend. He's lined up a buyer already. High 6 figures. All we need is to get the paperwork moving." He looked straight at me, smug as ever. "So, Dan, you ready to sign the house over?" The room went silent. Melissa's eyes flicked between us, hopeful, expectant. Travis's friends smirked, already picturing the payday. I folded my hands in my lap, letting the pause hang heavy. Then I leaned forward, meeting Travis's stare. "Funny thing about paperwork," I said slowly. "It's not always as simple as you think." And that was the moment I decided. Tomorrow, I'd reveal everything. But not just to Travis. To Melissa, too. In front of an audience that would make sure the truth echoed through every corner of this small town. The next morning, I called Chuck, my lawyer friend. "Today's the day," I told him. He chuckled. "You want me there in person, Dan?" "You bet," I said, "and bring a copy of the trust paperwork." By afternoon, plans were set. Melissa had mentioned they were inviting Travis's parents over for dinner that evening, apparently to celebrate the big sale. Perfect. I asked Chuck to swing by around 6, right when everyone would be gathered. When I got home from the diner, the house smelled of roasted chicken and garlic bread. Melissa was buzzing around the kitchen, humming like it was some holiday. Travis strutted through the living room in a pressed shirt, beaming like a man about to sign a $1 million deal. "You ready for tonight, old man?" he said, slapping me on the back a little too hard. I just smiled. "More ready than you'll ever know." By 6, everyone was seated. Travis's parents, Roger and Diane, sat at the table sipping wine. Melissa served the food, glowing with pride. And then Travis stood, clearing his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said grandly, raising his glass. "Tonight we celebrate the start of a new chapter. With Dad's blessing," he gestured at me, "we'll be selling this house and moving on to something bigger, better, and brighter." Melissa clapped softly, her eyes shining. His parents nodded approvingly. For a moment, I could almost see the future they imagined. Travis holding the check, Melissa on his arm, me shoved aside like yesterday's trash. That's when the doorbell rang. "Expecting anyone?" Travis asked, frowning. I leaned back, in my chair. "As a matter of fact, I am." Melissa went to open the door, and in walked Chuck, briefcase in hand. The room went still. "Sorry to intrude," Chuck said politely, shaking off the cold. "Dan invited me." Travis narrowed his eyes. "Who the hell is this?" I stood slowly, my heart steady, my voice calm. "This is my lawyer, and he's here to clear up a little misunderstanding." Chuck set his briefcase on the table, clicked it open, and pulled out a stack of documents. "Mr. Cooper asked me to bring official proof of ownership. This house belongs solely to him. Always has, and as of last week, it was placed into an irrevocable living trust." He slid the papers across the table toward Travis. "Which means, legally, neither you nor anyone else here has a claim on it. Ever." The silence was deafening. Travis's smug grin evaporated. That's ridiculous. Melissa and I—" Chuck cut him off. "Melissa has no legal standing either. Unless Mr. Cooper dies and leaves it to her, this property bypasses probate. The only listed beneficiary is—" He glanced at me. "My nephew, Jayce," I said firmly. "A man who actually respects what this home means." Melissa's face fell, her fork clattering against the plate. "Dad, what are you saying?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I'm saying you chose him over me. You let this man disrespect me in my own house, and you stood by while he plotted to take everything I worked for. So no, this place will never be yours to sell, to flip, or to gut for a home theater. Travis's voice rose, his face red. You think you're clever? You think you can embarrass me in front of my family? I didn't flinch. No, Travis. You embarrassed yourself by underestimating me. Roger and Diane shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Diane whispered, Travis, is this true? You told us you had this all lined up. Travis sputtered, but no words came out. His swagger was gone. The man who'd strutted through my house for months now looked like a child caught stealing. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Dad, please. We just wanted... I raised a hand, stopping her cold. You wanted my house, not me. You forgot the difference. Chuck closed his briefcase with a snap. Legally speaking, this conversation is over. The room was dead silent. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the air. I sat back down, cutting myself a slice of chicken. Dinner's getting cold. Eat up. Nobody moved. Travis clenched his fists, his pride crumbling with every second. And in that silence, I felt it, the moment of victory. But I wasn't done yet, because tomorrow morning, the whole town would know. Word spreads fast in a small Indiana town. By the next morning, half of Gary seemed to know what happened at my dinner table. I didn't have to say much. Travis's own parents did most of the talking. Roger was overheard at the diner shaking his head, telling his buddies how his son had tried to swindle an old widower out of his house and got slapped, with legal papers instead. Diane called Melissa's behavior ungrateful beyond words. By noon, folks at the steel plant, where I'd spent most of my life, were coming up to me with pats on the back. Heard you shut that boy down good, Dan, one said with a grin. About time somebody taught him a lesson. It wasn't about humiliating Travis. It was about reclaiming my dignity. And in this town, dignity still meant something. When I got home that evening, Melissa was waiting in the living room, her eyes red and puffy. Travis was gone. His truck had peeled out that morning, and from what I heard later, he'd driven back to his parents' place. Dad, she started, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. I stood there, arms crossed. Sorry for what, Melissa? For what he did, or for what you let him do? She dropped her head. Both. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to rewind the years to when she was still my little girl running across the yard with skinned knees. But I couldn't. Not now. Not yet. You sided with him against me, I said quietly, in my house. After everything I gave up for you. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I thought he knew what he was doing. I thought he could give us a better life. I shook my head. A better life isn't built on lies. Or greed. She reached out, but I stepped back. You need to figure out who you are without him, Melissa. And you need to figure out if you want a relationship with me, not with my house. For the first time in weeks, the house was silent. No cigars, no loud friends, no arrogant voice filling the air. Just silence and peace. Over the next few days, Melissa packed her things and went to stay with a friend. Travis disappeared from town altogether. People said he'd burned through his savings chasing another big deal that never panned out. As for me, I sat on the porch most evenings, watching the sun dip low over the neighborhood. The same porch where I'd once held Melissa after her first heartbreak. The same porch my wife and I had painted together all those years ago. And I realized something. It was never about the house. It was about respect. About not letting anyone, family or not, erase the life I'd built with my own two hands. So yes, I lost something. My daughter's trust, at least for now. But I gained something else. My dignity back, And maybe that's what justice really is. Not revenge, not humiliation. Just reclaiming your peace when others try to take it from you. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever felt pushed aside, disrespected, or treated like you don't matter, remember this. Your worth isn't in what others think they can take from you. It's in what you choose to protect. And me? I protected my home, my legacy, my name. Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.